Welcome to today's webinar, our Ignition webinar. And of course our Reliv mission is to nourish the world in mind, body and spirit. And today's webinar is the power of self-belief. Hello, my name's Birch and I'm the Sales Manager for Asia Pacific for Reliv International. Let me start today's webinar by asking you a question. Who knows who came fourth in the 1500 metre race in the 1952 Helsinki Olympics? You don't know? Well, let's come back to that later. Today's webinar is about the power of self-belief, and you have the power within you to succeed. We all have the power within us to succeed. It is simply a case of believing and having that core self-belief. And it's interesting because sometimes, many people access this core self-belief, but others put a blockage in their way, which becomes a limiting belief. And the power of self-belief is one of the most formidable forces in the universe when it works in full flow. There's been many great people throughout history who've proven this in their actions and in their accomplishments. Let's have a look at one very famous person who actually has used self-belief to achieve an amazing feat, and it's someone that I have spoken about before in other trainings. This gentleman's name is Roger Bannister. Now, I would expect that most people have heard of Roger Bannister, but if you haven't, he was the first man to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. And he set this momentous record when he was running in a race meet in Oxford in England. Now it's interesting because it had been thought that eventually someone would break the record at some point, but it was thought virtually impossible to break that 4-minute barrier. But the point was that it just hadn't been done. Now, the fact that World War II had happened had put a stop to a lot of athletes progressing in this field, and that may very well had had an effect on how long it took for someone to actually achieve this goal. But to many people, it was the impossible. However, on the 6th of May in 1954, Roger Bannister managed to set the new world record by running under 4 minutes in 3 minutes 59.4 seconds. And what's even more remarkable is that after his rival, Australian John Landy, beat his record by running 1 mile in 3 minutes and 58 seconds a month later. Now the thing is that when you have self-belief and you go out there and you achieve something and other people think may be impossible or too hard or too far out of reach, but when you go out there and you achieve it through your own self-belief and you prove it can be done, what happens is it sets a new benchmark. It inspires others, and when you strive through your self-belief and you break through, you draw others along with you. And that's exactly what happened with Roger Bannister. Now Bannister went on to beat Landy at the 1954 Commonwealth Games. And in this race, there's an interesting story because it's a part of history, because Bannister overtook Landy on the right while Landy was looking back over his left shoulder to see where Bannister was. Now the time was 3 minutes 58.8 seconds, with Landy finishing in 3 minutes 59.6 seconds. Neither of these times were faster than the record, but Bannister went on to then run the so-called metric mile, which is 1,500 metres at the European Championships in 3 minutes 43.8 seconds. What happens is when you break through, others will follow, and it comes down to self-belief. Now Landy and Bannister were two great athletes, but Roger Bannister proved something could be done. And of course, what we need to do is ask, how did he do it? Now most people would give an answer like hard training and dedication. However, because Bannister was working as a junior doctor at the time, His training regime was actually quite light. However, he still managed to achieve the goal for which he was most famous for. So the question is again, how did he do it? As I said, self-belief. Because there's only one way to find out if you can do something, and that is to step out and give it a go. The interesting thing as well with this is that Bannister seems to have been motivated to break the 4-minute mile after he had an absolutely catastrophic defeat at the 1952 Helsinki Olympics, where he was the one who came fourth in the 1500-metre race, and he didn't win any medals at all. And that was only 2 years earlier, before breaking the 4-minute mile. So yes, Bannister was the man who came fourth at the Helsinki Olympics. He had a complete failure in many people's eyes. And the funny thing is that at this point he almost decided to give up running altogether and just concentrate on his career as a doctor. Now, in many cases, people with a low self-esteem who don't have self-belief, at this point they may give up. And they're the people, as it shows you here on the screen, that comment in their journal, "Dear diary, sorry to bother you again." Low self-esteem gets you nowhere in life. Low self-esteem won't achieve anything. If you want to make achievements, you've got to be willing to put in what is required. And in the words of Winston Churchill, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Let me repeat that. Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. See, the interesting thing is that Bannister continued training. Although in terms of the modern day competitions, his training schedule was very light. But he was motivated. What happened was he didn't allow his self-doubts to sabotage his actions. What he did was he believed that he would break the world record. And all these things that happened to him seemed to have motivated him towards his goal rather than allow the self-doubt to destroy his goal. So every activity that he was involved in brought him closer to his goal, so he managed to finally break that record in Oxford in 1954. And as a result, he entered the annals of legend with his great achievement on that day, and one of the greatest achievements of any individual human being in history. The interesting thing is that it appears more than anything that Bannister believed that he would break the record, and it was this subconscious, single-minded belief that allowed him to do so. He had an unassailable conviction in his ability to succeed in achieving his goal, and that he did in spectacular style. Because he did not allow the defeats of the past. He did not allow, or what people would think or maybe term as failure, to stop him. And in the words of Vince Lombardi, it's not whether you get knocked down, it's whether you get up. Because what's important is to reinforce your self-belief. What we need to do is take a leaf out of Sir Roger's book and reinforce a self-belief. So you need to reinforce the self-belief in your ability to succeed in the goal you have set yourself. If you have not achieved your goals yet, then this is what you need to do. Remember, Bannister achieved his goal by taking the negative experience of losing at the Olympics and turning it around into a positive mindset that then led him to breaking a world record. He reinforced his self-belief. And in the words of Robert Kennedy, only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. Only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. And you know what? There is a way to do this. What you can do is go through some action steps. What you need to do is identify a time in the past when you failed at something, and even better if that was something related to your current goal or your most important goal. Think back to that time and ask yourself honestly why it was you didn't succeed on that particular occasion. So let's have a look at these action steps and how they can help. The 3 different action steps: what, so what, and what next. So let's have a look at what. The thing is, go back and analyze what actually happened. Go over the events in your mind as accurately as you possibly can. And step 2, so what? Well, what happened and why it happened? Analyze it. What happened? Why it happened? What was it about the event that things didn't go to plan? And what could you have done better? And be brutally honest when you're looking at these things. And then the 3rd step is now what? After you identified what didn't go to plan, look at what you could do differently or better in the future. If you do this and you're brutally honest with yourself, don't beat yourself up or kick yourself around, but just objectively identify it, realize what happened, think about what you could do better in the future, you will be better equipped to achieve your goal. Because what happens is, it's no longer failure, it's feedback. It's a completely different way of looking at it. So you can take something that you might feel was a failure by analyzing it through those action steps, turn it into a positive by having it as feedback. So what you've actually done in the terms of NLP or neuro-linguistic programming, you have reframed the event. So your confidence in facing up to a similar challenge should be boosted because you have a plan for dealing with the situation. And the funny thing is this: butterflies can't see their wings. They can't see how beautiful they are, but everybody else can. And you know what? People are like that. Because the trick now is to believe in your ability to succeed. You know from your feedback that you can. You just need to believe that you can do it. And if you find at any time that you're diverging from your path, just remember Sir Roger Bannister. If he could achieve his success after a so-called failure, so can you. What you need is to have that self-belief. If you take those action steps and you analyze it and you know then that you can do it, it is having self-belief. Now, it may not be this much self-belief that you have with Captain Kirk from Star Trek. I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of how awesome I am. Now, you may not have that much self-belief, but you don't need that much self-belief. All you need to do is be like Roger Bannister. Have enough belief to know that no matter what's happened in the past, it doesn't dictate what is going to happen in the future. What happens in the future is completely and totally up to you. Because when it comes to us, when it comes to what we can achieve, when it comes to what we can do, it comes down to our self-belief and what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Great words by Ralph Waldo Emerson. With that, that's the end of our webinar for this week, The Power of Self-Belief, and I will remind you to use your self-belief, use that greatness that's inside you, get out there, sponsor, promote, advance, and ignite your business. Thank you everyone for listening to this webinar today.